Greetings, Star Family. Evolutionary Astrologer Shannon Gill here, catching up with you today about what is happening here. We are definitely high summer, and it has been a little bit of a consensus inquiry in my client load around what is going on. We think about summer, we want to think that it's a time of freedom and fun and exuberance, and certainly that is available. But I will say that when June hit, we started having quite a shift of energies. Everything had been moving forward. We had this big influx of new energy in March with Saturn into Pisces and Pluto into Aquarius. And then in June is just sort of like we put on the brakes. So as always, I'm very curious what you are feeling. And please leave messages. If you haven't liked my page, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Yeah, so June, we started having a lot of the outer planets do their yearly retrograde action. So first we had Pluto, who has been in Aquarius since March, retrograde back into the anaretic degree of Capricorn. So the anaretic degree is the last degree of the sign. There are 30 degrees in a sign, the anaretic being the 29th degree, which is considered the critical point or the death degree. So in a way, we are doing this sort of cha-cha with Pluto moving forward into the Aquarius, into the new paradigm and the new age, and then going back and saying, we better retrace our steps. We better go back and review. Have we really cleaned up all of the past? Are there any toxic roots that still need to be, weeded? And so again, Capricorn is the system, it's the structure, it's the foundation of our world. And we always in astrology need to remember that we can look at the outward of the expression of the sign planet, or we can look at the internal, because there's a relationship to both, right? The micro and the macro. So the outward expression of Capricorn is our government, all of the operations, our structures, our foundation, our government, our medical, our education, all of these different institutions that have been sort of wrapped up in this old paradigm, this sort of dying archaic pattern that has been in this process of transmutation as we're ending one age, beginning a new age. More specifically, since Pluto moved into Capricorn back in 2008, that began the sort of emergence of the toxicity from the underneath and from the underbelly. Pluto, again, is the planet that rules that underworld energy, that shadow energy that has everything to do with things that are rotting and dying. And so in this case, talking about the system, it's been a lot of corruption that has been revealed. So going back to that anaretic, that death degree, we're seeing more and more things being revealed in the world. But for me, what's most important as an evolutionary astrologer is what can we control? We can control our own inner landscape. We can control our own inner relationship to the planets, which in this case we're talking about how is our relationship to our inner foundation and our inner structure and our relationship to our own inner authority. So I'm sure you've heard me talk about this before. We're coming out of this program of where the power has always been outside, and we are always looking for the guidance or the directives or the laws. And this new age is about self-government, self-governing, and it is about autonomy and sovereignty. And so when we're going back into this death degree of Capricorn, we have to look at where are our dependencies, where are we still projecting our power out, or in another way to look at it, waiting for someone to save us, not fully employing our power, which means our responsibility. We have a responsibility to be the new leaders, the new pioneers of this new world. And so there are ways in which we're still enacting our inner child, mommy, daddy complex in our relationships or even in our community. And so these are questions to be asking now that Pluto is retrograde and will be retrograde until October 10th. So the second planet that went retrograde is Saturn, and Saturn rules Capricorn. So we have this sort of repeat archetypal theme. And if you remember, in March, Saturn moved into Pisces, the last sign of the zodiac. Saturn ruling, again, our 3D structural reality, the infrastructure, the architecture of our world. Moving into the last sign of the zodiac, it's also repeating that it's implicit that things are ending. The old ways are dissolving, and Saturn requires us to be the mountain goat, to pick up our bootstraps and do the work. Capricorn, Saturn want perseverance and discipline and alignment and integrity. And so now that Saturn is going backwards, retrograde, it is the invitation to take a look at, how are we doing? We're halfway through the year. Where are we with our plans for what we're building, the architecture of our own lives or of our families or of our community? And, we always have to look at the shadow in Pisces where, are we living in an illusion or in a dream? Are we checking out? Are we really fully awake? And so the last planet that went retrograde in June was Neptune, which rules Pisces. So that's interesting, right? We've got Saturn retrograde, which rules Capricorn, while Pluto's retrograde in Cap. We've got Saturn retrograde in Pisces, and here then we have Neptune going retrograde the same month, which rules Pisces. So when there's this double emphasis and these weaving together of similar archetypes, it makes it really clear what we're looking at. Structure, alignment, staying awake, being in resonance and integrity to the higher spiritual laws, to the natural world, to the natural elements. So when the planet's retrograde, the energy is inviting us to go inside, to review, to revisit, to reconsider, so that we might recalibrate or rewrite the story when they go direct. So these outer planets, they go retrograde every year, and they will be retrograde till the fall, some of them all the way to the end of the year. So that's June. Now, when July rolled in, wow, a lot of astrologers are saying that maybe that July was the most intense month of the year. I don't know. March, with Pluto moving into Aquarius, Saturn, Pisces, it's tough. In July, what happened is that we had the transiting nodal axis shift out of where it's been for the last year and a half, Scorpio, Taurus, into Libra, Aries. So if you're not familiar with the nodal axis, I call it the destiny line or the line of fate. It has to do with the collective evolutionary path, collective karma, collective dharma, and it is also what creates all of the eclipses. So wherever the transiting, which means where it is in the sky, nodal axis is, it at any one time is going to imply where the eclipses will fall. And again, eclipse seasons are twice a year. We had that big eclipse season back in April and May, and our next one will be in October. So the shift of the nodes means that the shift of the collective karma, the shift of the collective focus has changed for humanity, for everyone. And moving into Libra, Aries, this is the axis of relationships. This is the axis of self, Aries, and other, Libra. So essentially what this means is that all of the big change will be happening in the realm of relationships. Relationships with our intimate partners, relationships with our business partners, relationship with our sisters, with our aunts, with our girlfriends, with our parents. When we're talking about Libra, which is the South Node, it is the mirror, the sacred mirror. So that's any two people looking back at each other. When we have eclipses, that's where the force change will happen. And again, eclipse season happens twice a year. So this was on July 17th when the nodal axis shifted into this new axis. The same week, just a few days later, on July 22nd, Venus, that actually rules Libra, went retrograde. And so here we have another planet going retrograde. However, the other planets retrograde every year. And for example, Mercury retrogrades 3 times a year. We're very familiar with that. But Venus, on the other hand, only retrogrades every other year. So every 18 months. It's much more rare. Venus, again, rules our relationships. It is one of the 2 planets that has dual rulership. Venus rules Taurus, which has to do with our relationship to ourselves, and to Libra, which is our relationship to other. So during this time of the retrograde, we were going to be going deep into the subtlety of these dynamics. Relationships are basically everything in life. When we think about our relationship to ourselves, we're also thinking about our relationship to what we want, to what we desire, which means what we value. What we value and what we want is sort of the foundational principle around what we're going to create, what we're going to try to manifest, what direction we move. Our vibration of whatever our relationship to ourselves then becomes a magnet for the relationship dynamics that we attract from the outside. So you can see the complexity here. When Venus goes retrograde, it's a time where we clean out the closets. It's a time where whatever we've been sort of shoving under the bed is overflowing. So I've noticed And I always notice, because I see clients, and of course I'm just aware, and I have lots of friends in my life, that during these Venus retrograde times, the relationships take on a level of intensity. There's bumps, there's things that are uncomfortable because the energy stops and is inverted. Whatever we've been avoiding or denying or glossing over is right in our face. So this is not in any way to just irritate us or, to cause disharmony. In evolutionary astrology, there are no malefic aspects. There are no malefic planets. Everything is with the intention of our growth and our evolution, which has to do with waking up where we might have fallen asleep at the wheel. So during this time, July 2nd through September 3rd, the invitation is to reassess. Where are you in your relationships? And sometimes we don't want to rock the boat, which is actually a shadow of Libra. And yet, if we're on that end of the spectrum, remembering that Libra is the south node, then maybe we need to move more towards the polarity point, which is Aries, which has to do with owning your own truth, owning your own needs, maybe putting yourself first, or looking at, are you one of those types of people that is really uncomfortable with disharmony, so you stuff your truth? Or are you somebody that just wants relationship and intimacy so much that you will do anything for it, including concede whenever you are out of alignment or integrity with yourself? On the other hand, are you one of the people that is more maybe in the Aries realm, where you're not so considerate to other people's opinions or that easygoing when it comes to compromise? This is the axis of polarity we're going to be talking about for the next year and a half. Not just because Venus is retrograde, because the nodes are in the axis of relationship. The Venus retrograde is actually just amplifying what is coming. It's sort of like the prelude to what we will be working with and what we're going to be dealing with for the next year and a half. One last piece that's important to share is that when the nodal axis shifted into Aries Libra, it went to the 29th degree. So the nodal axis actually moves backwards in the zodiac. So it went to the last degree, to the anaretic degree. Remember, we talked about that because that's where Pluto is, at the anaretic degree of Capricorn. So what that means is that Pluto, Lord of the underworld, is making a T-square with the nodes. So this is a tense aspect. This is an aspect that is forcing change. Pluto is that planet that requires surrender. It requires being honest and facing up to the underworld, to the shadow. It doesn't care if it's uncomfortable. It's saying, now things have to change. And remember, we talked about Capricorn being our dependencies and the structures and the foundation. It is also the sign that rules our family systems, the authority within our family or the distortion within our family, if we're talking about Pluto. And how does that relate to our dance with relationships? Of course it does. We are hardwired in our childhood by our family dynamics, which are certainly passed down through many, many generations. And that's another thing that I'm hearing about, is that this Pluto in Capricorn is, for some people, inspiring the desire to do ancestral healing, going way back into the family line, the family structures, and where the toxicity and the distortion began. And I was just on a podcast yesterday with my dear friend Tiana discussing this, and we were talking about how compassion is so important at this time, even when we're dealing with some of the atrocities on the planet within our own family system or just in the world, because it's implicit of the distortion and the toxicity in the collective that is been part of the byproduct of us being in this age of amnesia, in the dark ages, where we were, the illusion was we were separated from source, we're separated from the light. So this is where we get all the permeations of all of the distortion and the toxicity and the wounds and the abuse and the traumas. So this is a really, really important time. And now you might start to understand why the summer has this level of intensity. And, I think I just have to remind all of us, including myself, that this is the times that we signed up for. And, if you have followed my work or you work with me, you understand that I really believe, and I coach people to understand that we have a choice about what level of reality we exist upon. Now, if we're still tied into some of the old toxic roots from our past, we have to attend to those. It doesn't necessarily mean going deep into the story and having to relive. There's different paths and different ways, and actually really incredible technology nowadays to accelerate that path beyond story. But once we are able to find some sort of peace with that level of our past, then we can flip the switch and we can actually accelerate our vibration and our frequency so that we have a different experience of reality, because this third dimensional reality is in this death and this disintegration phase, and then this higher vibrational state, this more fourth and fifth dimensional reality, is simultaneously existing. And this is where we're weaving together the new earth, where we're accessing these higher levels of co-creative energies, and we're dancing between these realms. And so this is why I always come back to how important it is our daily practices. This is where the Saturn is saying, every day, one foot in front of the other, how you treat your body, how you work with your thoughts, how you are intentional about your breath, how you view reality through non-duality instead of being divisive or judgmental. It has everything to do with how you're going to be able to gracefully traverse these times. So more on that. If you haven't already liked my page, please do subscribe. I don't send out a ton, but I love coming on here with you guys. I really appreciate your support. As always, please drop a line. I love to hear how it's going. And I do plan to come back on really soon to go deeper into some of the intricacies of this Venus retrograde cycle, because we will be working with it all the way until September. So sending you so much love and many, many blessings. And as always, thank you for being a part of the shift.